Next up, another day of reckoning for the Republican Party with a major vote on whether to strip Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of her committee positions for promoting outlandish and dangerous QAnon conspiracy theory ideas and indicating support for people calling to execute prominent Democrats. The vote comes a day after several members of GOP leadership reportedly gave Greene a standing ovation in a closed-door meeting. And at the same time, they opted not to strip the third-ranking House Republican Liz Cheney of her leadership role over her vote to impeach Donald Trump last month, reportedly by a vote of 145 to 61. But it was Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's call not to take action on Greene, effectively forcing his members to go on the record and pick a side. Ahead of the vote, Greene took to the floor today to address the controversy.
School shootings are absolutely real. 9/11 absolutely happened. I do not believe that it's fake. I was allowed to believe things that weren't true, and I would ask questions about them and talk about them. And that is absolutely what I regret. I never once said any of the things that I am being accused of today during my campaign. I never said any of these things since I have been elected for Congress. These were words of the past.
Of course, this comes 5 days after Greene tweeted about her election conspiracy theories, quote, "I won't back down, I'll never apologize." And for the record, those other comments she's referring to from what she calls the past are from 2017, 2018, and 2019. As of this taping, the official vote hasn't yet happened, but questions about the future of the Republican Party are numerous. I'm joined by former Republican candidate for Secretary of State Anthony Amore and Republican activist and commentator Ed Lyons. Anthony and Ed, thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me ask you both about this idea of Taylor Greene's that because the comments she's made didn't happen when she was running or after she was elected, they are perhaps not as important as they would have been otherwise. We outlined some of the stuff she said in the introduction. She said Nancy Pelosi should get a bullet to the head. She also said of QAnon, the idea that Democratic Satanist pedophiles are a sort of a cabal running the country. She said there's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take this global cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles out, and I think we have the president to do it. She also said that the gang MS-13 had been used to execute Seth Rich, the former DNC staffer who was inaccurately accused of leaking to WikiLeaks. So when you say things like that, is there any kind of statute of limitations, or should there be? What do you think?
Well, I think that there has to be some reasonable period of time in which you should be able to evaluate a person. With social media and the internet that never forgets, I think we're always going to have these questionable comments from people's youth come up, and I think those should be debated. But no, when you run for office, you're running on your record. And when she was running for office because she didn't say objectionable things for, I don't know, a year or so, doesn't mean she shouldn't be held to account for the outrageous and nuts things that you just outlined that she has said. So I think she's fully accountable for these absurd statements, and she should be held to answer for them.
Ed, I'm guessing that you're on the same page as Anthony there. Am I right?
Yes, of course. I mean, we're not talking about something she said 25 years ago. This is very recently, when she was a grown-up, when she was involved in things. I think she must be held accountable for these things, and I think it's really bad for the country that someone like that is in Congress who says those things.
Anthony, House Democrats, as you know, have been pushing Kevin McCarthy, the Republicans in the House, to remove her from her committee assignments, and they are not going to take that approach, so now the entire House is going to vote. If you're Kevin McCarthy, why not just go ahead and take, strip those assignments from her, if for no other reason than because it's probably smart politics, because you don't want to be tagged with someone who is a liability in the way that Marjorie Taylor Greene already is. Why not make that move?
Well, I think if you look at the way the Democrats have approached it, you can see why maybe McCarthy might fight back. I mean, I don't want to defend Marjorie Taylor Greene in any way, but if you look at Pelosi's statements just yesterday with calling him Kevin McCarthy using Q's instead of the hard C sounds and K,
right, as opposed to GOP, but QAnon, yeah.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And then you see the same thing from Catherine Clark, just classless references to Republicans, spelling Republican with Q in it. Why would the Republican side say, well, let's extend an olive branch when those two in high leadership positions in the House are just clearly looking for someone to substitute for Trump, someone to point at as the bad guy. And again, let me be clear, Marjorie Taylor Greene brings it upon herself. She's the perfect sitting duck for this. But the Democrats have done it in a really disingenuous fashion. They failed to vote for a resolution against the vile anti-Semitic marks by Ilhan Omar in the past. They don't have anything to be proud of. Maxine Waters voting on someone else being removed from committees when she called for violence against members of a presidential administration. I mean, I think we're seeing an era, and it's only going to get worse in my estimation, in which these politicians are using social media to say things that you would admonish your teenage child for.
Ed, Anthony just suggested a parallel between things Taylor Greene has said on the one hand and things that Democrats like Ilhan Omar have said on the other. What do you make of that parallel? Do you see it yourself?
I don't think we should decide on what kind of ethics you want for congressmen based on what previous congressmen have done. I think cases have to be evaluated on their own. I think that Steve King, the former congressman from Iowa, lost his committee assignments because he said racist things. There have certainly been racist Democrats in the past. I don't really think we should keep ratcheting ourselves into worse and worse behavior. I think we should look at cases as they come up. I think she should suffer consequences no matter what has happened before.
Just to disclose a little bit, my own take on this is I'm just so worried about what seems to be an increasing acceptance of political violence in the country. And I'm spooked by anyone who endorses that being in a leadership role. So just by way of personal disclosure, as a citizen who has kids who are going to be growing up here, that's one of the things that really gives me great pause with this. Let me ask you, too, about the divergent responses from Republicans in the Senate on the one hand and Republicans in the House on the other. I want to read Mitt Romney's statement about Marjorie Taylor Greene. He said of her within the last day or two, our big tent is not large enough to both accommodate conservatives and kooks. Romney obviously has been sort of on the left flank of the GOP, but Mitch McConnell said some very, very harsh things about her beliefs, calling her a cancer on the party. You have the Senate on the one hand striking this very skeptical concern note, and on the other hand, a big chunk of the House Republican caucus not just saying, we don't like what the Democrats are pushing us to do here, but actually giving her a standing ovation. Between Republicans in the Senate and Republicans in the House, who does the momentum lie with right now among the Republican Party as a whole?
That's tough to say. I mean, one of the interesting things about this standing ovation story is when I first read it, it said that about half of them stood, and then you started seeing people draw back on that. And the other thing is we don't know what she said that precipitated them.
Good point.
The people who did stand up and applaud. She might have been incredibly conciliatory. And I want to just go back to the last point and say I'm not making the argument that she shouldn't be removed from committees. I'm just talking about the attitude in general. But it's hard to tell, when it go onto the social media at any minute, and you'll have a different sense of where the party is. I don't know Republicans who are admirers of that brand of politics. I side with Mitt Romney in this. I think he said it really well. There's no tent for any party big enough for this sort of violent talk and outlandish, absurd conspiracy accusations, not just theories. I think Mitt's right. I hope that our party leans center right. I think it should be more of a Mitt Romney than a Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course. And I think my sense is from the people I know that that's what people want. I just hope I'm right.
There is actually evidence that it might be trending in the direction you want. There was a poll recently that showed support for QAnon among Republicans dropping down to 24% nationally in January. I think it was at 38 in October. Ed, you get the final word. You've got about 20 seconds to predict where the future of the party lies on this stuff.
Well, the Constitution meant for the House to reflect the passions of the people and for the Senate to be a little more distant from the passions of the people. So the Republicans in the House are reflecting, they're much closer to the voters. They have to get elected more often, raise money in smaller amounts. They're closer to the passion of the base. The Senate is further away, more insulated. They can be more circumspect about QAnon or more against it than the House can be. I think the passion of the base is much more toward QAnon than I would like. I think 24% is an outrageous number considering what QAnon is really about. But 24% doesn't get to control the party unless the 76% go along with it. People like Anthony don't want it. I don't want it. I think that in this state, hopefully we will reject it. I do know people who believe in some of this, unfortunately. It's real, and we have to oppose it.
All right, Anthony Amore, Ed Lyons, thanks to both of you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.